Hello, I'm Chuck Wolf, Chief Executive for Charles J. Wolf Associates, LLC. As a motivational speaker and a leadership consultant and executive coach and trainer, I often work with very successful people in their companies. Since many can't afford a professional, I volunteer to host a radio talk show called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on a nonprofit community radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, WPKN. My reason for doing the show is to share with as many people as possible this wonderful process for helping people manage their own emotions and their relationships with others. My goal is for everyone listening to learn to use the Emotion Roadmap to make life better. As you listen to me, help others, I hope you are also learning. As a Simsbury resident, I'm delighted to be able to make the show available through Simsbury TV. To learn more, go to my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. Thank you for listening and watching. And this is Chuck Wolf. You're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I'm glad to be here with you, and it's kind of a rainy and sort of cold, chilly day. Feels like winter's coming, and you can feel that in the air a little bit today. But I guess we're going to have some warmth a little later in the week. So it goes back and forth in New England. If you're not from New England, then you've been here for a while, then you know that the weather can change on a dime, and it just went from just some lovely days to kind of cool and wet outside. So as you're thinking about my show, and I want to thank all of you who are regular listeners that tune in all the time. Just one of the people in the studio just told me at the end that she really enjoys listening and she gets wisdom from the show. I hope you all do. And one of the things that I hope you all get from the show is that there's a way to take more control over how you feel emotionally. And that the show's called The Emotion Roadmap, and it's about taking that wheel and controlling how you feel, being more accountable and responsible for your own feelings. And there's a lot happening right now in the world. A lot of it's tragic, actually, and it's a shame. Some things are positive, some good things certainly, but we just had that incident in New York City yesterday, and it's funny. I was on the phone with someone. I was talking to a client, someone that potentially I'm going to do some business with, and she was telling me, excuse me, I really have to take this phone call because there's been a shooting around the Tribeca area, and my daughter's calling me. And I said, really? And I hadn't heard anything about that yet. But then we heard about this person who apparently rented a Home Depot truck and drove down a bicycle lane and just killed people, wantonly killed people. And then all the angst came out about the terrorism, and then people were reminded that there's extreme version of Islam that is causing people to want to take other people's lives, and and all the uproar around that. And part of me was thinking, geez, I hope this doesn't create another backlash against people of that faith, because I mean we just had that horrible shooting in Las Vegas, and that had nothing to do with Islam. And so as you think about all the people out there that just have this need to want to hurt other people, what a shame that is, and how awful it is. And then there's this sense of wanting an inside scream, at least for me, that feels like, why are people doing this to each other? What could possibly cause people to want to kill innocent people that they don't know, have no relationship with? There's no ill will created. Nothing bad happened. It's just people just acting out in a very strange, bizarre, and demented way. And then part of it is like, so what can you do about any of this? And it feels somewhat helpless at times, where you feel like, there's nothing I can do to stop a deranged person from wantonly going out and attacking other people. So what's this show about? This is about controlling how you feel. And so, in coming into the show, I thought about, what can you do? What can I say to people that is a bit uplifting, that helps to take them out of this despair that people might feel around incidents like this? I was pleased to see that they went forward with the Halloween parade the other day, yesterday in New York City, to celebrate Halloween, and people are trying to just continue to move forward and live their lives. So one thing is, you don't let crazy people shut down your world and your life. But the other thing you can do, and I do believe that each of us in our own way can make a difference. And one of the things that you can do is, And one of the uplifting things I thought that you might want to think about that potentially you can do is a way of trying to handle some of this anger that you feel around this injustice and this insanity is to try and do something kind for somebody, particularly on days when something bad has happened. Make even more of an effort. If you're a good person, generally speaking, and you want to do good for the world and for people and for the people you love and you care about, and even for the stranger that you don't know, maybe do a little bit more of it when something like this happens. You know, if the world is a kinder, nicer place because people like you are in it, doing something nice for somebody, just a surprise random act of kindness that you might do for another person, it's something you can feel good about. And it's something that the person that you do it for is going to feel wonderful about. And so maybe the one thing I wanted to say around this was that, you know, when something awful happens, first of all, don't blame a whole group of people for an act of a single person. That's number one. And number two is, if you act in a kind and nice way, and you're generous and supportive and caring about others, and you operate as you travel through life with a sense of empathy, and I'm going to talk more about empathy today, and you operate with this idea of trying to feel what others feel, trying to create feelings in others that you want them to experience so that the world seems like a better, warmer, kinder place. The things that each one of us can do is to try and do a random act of kindness more often, more frequently, daily, to try and make the world a better place so people are less mean, less uncaring, and less likely to commit acts of violence against one another. I also want to say something about the upcoming holiday. I won't be on in the third week of Wednesdays anymore. I'm on the first and second week of Wednesdays. And well, not the third week, but sometimes I'm on around Thanksgiving. I'm not going to be on around Thanksgiving this year. So I wanted to say a little bit about Thanksgiving, and that is sometimes the unkindest things are the things we say to people we love. You know, we had an election a year ago that continues to be upsetting to a lot of people for many different reasons. And I just encourage people to be more understanding that not everyone feels the same way about the election. Not everyone has the same politics. Not everyone agrees with one another about what should be in the new tax cuts or policies for health care. And not everyone has the answer that I want or you want. So be more forgiving and understanding. If it's possible to have a conversation with a relative at the table that you disagree with, don't be judgmental. Don't be simply waiting for the other person to finish so you can tell them what you think and what you believe and what you know to be truth and to be right. Be open to the possibility that their point of view, their different opinion, their value scheme, what they think, what they believe, may be just as valuable and actually even more correct than your own point of view. And I know how challenging that is. So if you can't do that, then just simply be accepting of people that you love, that you may not like that much, but that you love because they're related to you and they're family. And just let things pass. I've found that there are people, when I feel like talking about politics, for instance, that I can talk to comfortably and know that I won't agree with everything they say, but we can talk about why we might feel the way we do without being disagreeable. So while we may not be on the same page exactly, we can kind of learn from each other if we're open to the other person's point of view and a willingness to accept that maybe my point of view isn't the correct one. But I find so many people think that what they believe is right, absolute truth, fundamentally true, and so unopen or unwilling to engage in any kind of real dialogue. It's simply two people exchanging monologues. When I finish, you're going to start, and when you start, you're going to tell me why I'm wrong and you're right. That's not a dialogue, that's a monologue. So I encourage you to, if you can have dialogues where you're open to other people's points of view and you simply are judgmental and want to tell someone your point of view and you're unlikely to sway that other person, I'd say why bother? Don't go down that path. Take the wheel and control how you and that other person feel by just letting things pass. I find when I'm with certain relatives that they can't help themselves. They want to say something negative about what they think about what's happening in the political scene. And where I used to engage to just find out even more to why they feel the way they do, when I find that if they're a close person, truly unwilling to consider any other point of view, I don't think it's worth the time. Nor do I want to engage in a way that might be upsetting to them. In case I know something that I could point out about why they're wrong, just isn't worth it anymore. I really found that. I used to really think it's important to have dialogue, to be able to engage with people. But I picked my spots, and maybe you should as well. Just think about how the other person's feeling when they're so locked in, they're so strongly supportive of their own point of view that they can't really hear something else. Don't go there. If for some reason they approach you and they want to know what you think and you really feel like something's changed, then I, for me personally, I'm happy to have a conversation with someone who approaches me that way. So I just suggest, as you think about getting together around family dinners, that you think about, hey, maybe we can talk about politics, but maybe, again, we shouldn't, because there's just no upside to it. So I encourage you to be talking about relationships, about what else is really happening in people's lives that they control, what's going on with people's families, what's going on with people's children, what's going on with people's communities, what's going on in people's workplaces. Talk about things where you may have a constructive dialogue with people you may not see that often, that are part of your extended family that you love, so that the loving feeling is what everyone is left with, instead of some hateful, hurtful words that might be exchanged if you get into subjects where people stop listening to each other. So I encourage you to think like that a bit. I also want to talk a little bit about empathy because, excuse me, sometimes we have different ideas about what it means to be empathic. A lot of us like to think we're empathic. And I don't know if everybody really understands what it means to be empathic, because there's kind of at least a few different definitions of what it means to be empathetic or empathic. And since I like my show to be an interactive show, and I know that people sometimes are just waiting for me to call in, because if you haven't listened to the show before, first of all, thank you very much for tuning in and staying on at least this long, and hopefully learning a little bit more about what the show is about. The show is about people calling in with challenging situations in their life, where there are things where they're stuck, uncertain, doubtful, confused, and maybe even upset about something that's happened, or in a situation that they need to address, but they haven't yet because they're worried about escalation and confrontation and hurt feelings and betrayal of trust and all kinds of things that really matter. And so when you have that going on in your life, if you have a certain situation with someone that's very important to you, and some people that are very important to you are the obvious ones, are people in your family, people that you love, people that are your children, your spouses, your partners, your in-laws, your parents, those are really important situations. But so are situations at work or in your community where you're engaging with people. Excuse me, where you're engaging with people and you may need them because they're part of a project team that you're part of, or maybe you report to someone that you're really struggling to like, but you have to work with, and you want to know how to address a tough situation, a challenging situation. And then I help people who call in by introducing this idea of an emotion roadmap. And again, for those of you who've never listened before, an emotion roadmap is this concept of trying to get from a feeling that isn't helpful to a feeling that would be more helpful. In fact, the best case scenario is transferring from a feeling that isn't helpful to a feeling that would be ideal to feel. So let's assume that for whatever reason you're dealing with somebody at work that you have reason not to believe. You have seen them perhaps stretch the truth, even lie outright, and you're reluctant to have to do business with them, but you've been assigned a project where they're working with you very closely and you have to depend on them. So how do you build trust with that person? So how do you get from feeling like this person is untrustworthy to trusting? How do you move from feeling untrustworthy to trusting? How do you feel when you're presenting something to someone and you want to feel confident about what you're about to present, but you're feeling very anxious about it because you know it might escalate and turn into something that you don't want to have happen, but it might become something that festers or becomes something that is irritating to the other person or even makes them angry, and you're worried about that response. And so you're trying to say something, do something, make something happen that you know the other person is going to struggle with, at least the way you're thinking about addressing it now. And so the emotion roadmap is all about understanding the feelings that are in play, what you're feeling and what another person who might be key to what you're doing is feeling. Thinking about how you might create a different set of feelings for yourself and for the other person that would be ideal to feel instead of the ones that exist. And then putting a plan together to help with that. So last show is actually a great show, I thought. In case you want to listen to it, you can listen to our shows on podcast on SoundCloud is what I typically listen to, or iTunes is another one, and Stitcher. You just look for the Emotion Roadmap. Actually, now I have Xfinity, and this is really interesting. If you have Xfinity where you live and you call up the Emotion Roadmap on your TV, if you have one of those remotes that has a microphone, this is really cool, I thought. Then my show pops up because I am actually as we speak, or as you listen and I speak, my show I'm recording it with a camera because it appears on my local Simsbury Community Television. I'm from Simsbury, Connecticut, and it appears on my the local TV station, Simsbury Community Television, and they put it up on YouTube. So the other day I just got an email from Comcast saying, and you can say, if you know what you want to look for on YouTube, you could say whatever the show is on YouTube and enter your microphone. And then if you're set up this way, it will take you to YouTube and it will take you to what you want to see. So, my latest show that I've put up on podcast, if you want to see on YouTube, you can just say, the Emotion Roadmap on YouTube, enter your microphone on your remote control, and boom, my show pops up. And it's the most recent one, which is the one I did last week. We had lots of callers calling in about very challenging situations. And what I love about my show is that this idea of trying to help people emotionally, often in a very few minutes, I can help you figure out how to move from what you are feeling to what you want to feel for you and whoever it is you're dealing with in a very constructive way. So when people are hanging up, they're saying, thank you so much. One person said, this is gold, Chuck. Thank you so much. I'm going to do this as soon as I hang up the phone. So I'm hoping you have that experience too. And if you want to call me and you want to talk to me about something going on in your life where you'd like some help and I can introduce this emotion roadmap, you do a couple of things. One is you address something that maybe you might get some help for professionally if you wanted to go someplace where somebody's an excellent problem solver or perhaps even a therapist, and then you'd pay for it. But here, because you're a listener of WPKN, this service is provided as part of our community system. Our community radio is all about talk shows on 12 to 1 p.m. during the weekdays. We have different topics on each day. But I'm on the first and second Wednesdays of each month. And so if you're interested in calling me, I'm going to give you the number in a minute. You can call me with a challenging situation you have. And when you get some help, not only are you being helped, hopefully, in a way that's very constructive for your life going forward, but also it benefits everybody else who's listening. Because my goal when I first started doing this show 7 years ago, it was the idea that not everybody can afford to pay a consultant to come in and help them to be smarter about what they're doing emotionally. In fact, very few people pay for that on their own. Sometimes companies will pay for it, but individuals don't often. Sometimes people get help in a therapeutic way from a therapist, but this is more about helping healthy people just deal with a real tough challenge in their life that they haven't been able to figure out on their own, and they're really struggling with it, and it's really important to them, and the stakes are high, and I'm here for you. I'm here to help you. And when I help you, other people who are listening hopefully are learning about this idea of trying to use this emotion roadmap in their own lives. One of my clients that I work with in a coaching situation told me that she finds herself in every meeting now, as soon as she recognizes that something's amiss, something's off a little bit, there's a person in the meeting who seems to have something going on that isn't really constructive and it might be really detrimental unless we address it, she immediately asks herself, well, what is he feeling? Or what is she feeling? What would I want him or her to feel? How can I create that feeling for him or her right now in this meeting at this moment? How do I do that? I'll tell you a story in a little bit about how something happened to me recently where a feeling I didn't want to create got created in the group I was presenting to, and I had to address it in a heartbeat. Now, what happens on my show when you call me is we have planning time, and I ask people, when you think about this, if I'm going to help you plan emotionally how a interaction you're about to have is going to happen, how can you possibly not be better? Instead of just winging it and hoping for the best, if you and I talk about how you are feeling and how the person you want to talk to and address or even confront is feeling and how you want them to feel, and we plan for a better positive outcome. We plan emotionally what you're going to feel when you first sit down with the person and what you want them to feel. How you set the tone in the beginning of the meeting. What's going to happen in terms of feelings when you address particularly the issue that may be on the table that you want to talk about with them. What do we want them to feel and you to feel, and how do we plan for that better, more ideal feeling to show up instead of what's likely to happen? And I help you with that. And you learn how to do that. Why wouldn't you do that for every situation, every meeting that you have where it's really important, the stakes are high, and it's very challenging? And if you do it for every meeting that you have that's like that, how can you not be better? So planning emotionally what you want to experience is a real innovation that comes from this emotion roadmap. It's partly my own creation. I got real lucky in life. I got to work with the people from Yale University who were very much responsible for this idea of this new science of emotional intelligence. And in working with them, my role was to help make this useful, practical, operational. How do you actually put this into play and make it work? And that's what the emotion roadmap's about. That's why I've been doing this for the last 7 years. I'm hoping all of you who listen regularly are learning how to do this for yourselves. Anytime something seems a bit off to you and the stakes matter, think about what you're feeling and what somebody else is feeling. And if you have time, plan how you want them to feel, how you want to feel yourself as you address whatever the issue might be. And when you're in a situation where you have to react right away, and you've reacted to situations like the one that just happened in the past and it's ended poorly, try to control yourself. Try to grab that wheel and make sure that you don't go off the road. Grab the wheel and take that wheel, control how you feel by stopping yourself from responding in ways that you know are unlikely to be successful. And ask yourself, what could I do right now instead of how I want to react? Because I know how I want to react, and how I've reacted in the past almost never works. So as you can see, again, how can you not be better? So let me give you the number and see if people want to call in. And if you want to call in about a challenge you have, great. And if you want to just call in and tell me about what you think about empathy, how you create it, how you generate it, what it means to you. I'd like to talk some about empathy this show. So the number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And since I've been talking a while and people probably didn't know what the number was, I'll give it a couple of times again. Again, it's fun for me when we have an interactive show. Obviously, I came on with a lot of things to say today, so I've been talking a lot. And I hope that what you heard is helpful to you in different ways. But I would like to hear from you as well. Again, so if you've got something going on in your life that you'd like some help with, maybe it's a conflict with somebody that's close to you from a family perspective. Maybe it's something going on at work, something in your community, in your neighborhood, wherever it might be. Or maybe it's something going on inside yourself. sometimes our issues, situations that we face that are really difficult to resolve aren't with somebody else. Sometimes they're internal issues. So the number is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And if you don't have a challenging situation, okay. Hi, this is Chuck Wolf. You're on the air. Who am I talking to?
Hey, how are you? For the sake of it, my name is Bob.
Okay, Bob. Thanks.
I'm a social worker,
uh-huh.
and I used to be a therapist, and I'm really stumped with an issue that I'm having with my Asperger's brother and my mother, who's very severely sick with cancer, and she's being put on guilt trips by him about how she didn't do right by him in his life, and they've tried so hard, and my father just died, so
a lot of grief, and a lot of consternation. Yeah, so you're really challenged right now. Okay.
He uses her vulnerability to make her feel guilty, and she's trying to realize that she's trying to choose that she can feel any way she wants, and she doesn't have to choose to feel that way. But she's very vulnerable, so she is a social worker too, and she's a therapist, and she knows what to do, but she's in such a state, and her husband just died, and my father just died, so it's really a tough situation,
Right.
And I just want to hear what you got to say,
Well, let me ask you. You obviously, both you and your mother have a background in these in issues where people face dire situations, and so you must have some thoughts yourself. So let me. I always like to tell people that I don't want to assume that anything that might be obvious to me is something you haven't thought of, because people that call the show usually, especially if you've got advanced degrees and you understand how to work with other people, you've got some thoughts about this. So why don't we start with that? What do you what have you tried already, and what are you thinking about trying? And let me see if maybe I can help with that.
Well, as much as I want to interact with him and have a relationship with him, he's very destructive and manipulative. So I find that, and he has a lot of jealousy towards me because he failed in his life in his own eyes.
Right.
And he's jobless. He has a young son that he has to bring up, so he has the pressures. He's not sure what kind of role he should take with my mother. He's confused, and I'm just focusing on what can protect myself from his toxicity, so I don't get overloaded, and so I don't even interact with him because I'm afraid I'll get too emotional and I'll lose my emotional stability.
Okay, so you've kind of withdrawn from him. How about with your mother? What's your relationship like now in terms of trying to work with her around these issues?
She's going to say that I'm the same as him, but she realizes that that's not true. And she just wants to try to treat and that he's a normal individual. Quote, normal.
Hey, Bob, one of the things I'm struggling with the connection is are you in a tough signal area or something with a cell phone, or?
Yeah, because I'm having to pick her up now to take her to appointments and stuff like that. So I only had a minute here, so. Okay,
well, so I didn't quite hear. What are you trying to do for her? Because I can hear you now, so go ahead.
Just being there for her, telling her that it's not her fault, and that she did everything that she could in her life for him. And that she can control how she feels and what kind of approach, and not feel guilty if she doesn't, but she constantly feels this guilt.
So you're having a conversation with her that's kind of saying what's obvious, right? I mean, you're trying to be supportive. You're trying to say, look, whatever's going on for him is going on for him. And your role in that is that you tried, you did your best, and then at some point people have got to be accountable on their own, and he's not. and he wants to blame you, and it's dragging you down. And I'm saying, and as another son who's really, you know, supportive of you and thinks that you did a nice job with me, I think you need to just let that go and understand that that's his issue, and try not to let it impact you the way it is impacting you. Right? I mean, that's what you're saying right now.
I know. Like, he just came by and saw me talking with you, and he ran off in his car, jumped in it, and sped away. And so he has no control over his anger, and that's the big problem. When anger is in the system, then people lose control of themselves. That's the scary part.
So here's the thing. In some ways, I don't know if your mother is somebody that can tune into the show or wants to call herself, because what I would ask that you maybe address with her when you talk to her, when you pick her up, is so I know how you are feeling. How do you want to feel, Mom? I mean, with whatever time we got together, I mean, right now you're feeling a lot of guilt, and that's not the way we want to end here with you, and we only got whatever limited time. We all only have limited time on the planet, right?
Right.
So I'd love this for you to feel as good as you can, at least when you're with me. And what can I do, and what can you do? What can we do together to try and create the feelings we want to feel instead of how both of us are feeling right now? And then I think the two of you both have been dealing with other people for a long time. And one of the ways that you might address this is, if we were helping somebody else, what would we be saying to them?
Yeah, that's all valid. All right, thank you so much. What's your name?
I'm Chuck Wolf.
Thank you, Chuck. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Good luck with it. And again, ask your mom if she wants, she can call in or at least listen.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks, Chuck.
Bye-bye. Well, that's interesting. I hope, if you couldn't hear some of that, it was simply that a son with Asperger's who is struggling to make life work, and a brother who is a social worker who's been successful in his life, and a mom who has also been a social worker, maybe still is, but has cancer, and is struggling because the son with Asperger's makes her feel really guilty all the time. And the idea of an emotion roadmap is, what can we do to change how we're feeling? Now, you can't go back and redo all the stuff that happened when you're raising your son. You can't change all that. But what you can look at is the feelings you're having. And if you made some mistakes along the way, and this is really key, I think, for a lot of us, there isn't any one of us that isn't flawed in some way, right? We all have made mistakes over the years. Some more embarrassing than others, but we've all made them. And if we're not forgiving of ourselves, how do we ever move forward? Because everybody makes mistakes. I think one of the big issues people have sometimes is with perfection. And that's a whole nother show. But none of us are perfect. And while we might aspire to be as perfect as we can be, we are going to make mistakes. So I hope that you got the idea that in helping Bob and his mom, because they've both been social workers, they both know how to help people to deal with their feelings and to create new feelings and more ideal feelings. But sometimes when it's happening to you, it's sort of hard to do the same things you might encourage somebody else to do. So if you step out of the role of being you and you say, hey, if I was talking to somebody else, what would I say? But the other thing that's really important, and Bob, if you're still listening, is to think about, have you ever been in a spot before where you felt guilty about something? You realize that, sure, you made some mistakes along the way, but you did a lot of things right. And that at some point, the situation either has to correct itself or the other person has to take a responsibility. And that it's not all on me. And while I feel bad about the mistakes I made, I also feel pretty damn good about the things that I did right for this person. And I'm not gonna focus every day or for any number of hours for every day on the things that I did wrong that I can't correct. What I'll do in the time that I have is to try and do as best I can going forward every day, every moment, every hour, every minute. Trying to do the best I can for everybody I care about and for myself. And if you've ever found yourself able to move forward from letting go of something that you felt badly happened, that you were responsible for, what can you learn from that? How do you use what you might have experienced in the past that worked for you going forward. How do you make that work? Well, Bob was the first call. Let's see if we get anybody else. 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. Sometimes I find people are listening to the show and they're thinking about calling and they're a little nervous because they don't necessarily want to put their stuff out there for other people to look at or hear about or think about. And yet, think about it from two perspectives. One is when the show ends, and the show ends at 12:55 in another 20 minutes or so, the opportunity's gone. I mean, you can call back next week maybe, but if you're really on the verge of calling, why wait? What do you got to lose? And you might have a lot to gain. And not only, again, do you get help, I hope that as you listen to the situation I just spoke with Bob about, that maybe there's something in somebody else's life that was listening that sounds a bit similar. And maybe other people got some valuable learning from it. That only happens when people call in. When you call in. If you got something, don't go away thinking, geez, it might have been. What if I called? Gee, I wish I'd called. Because 2 weeks later, you know, things are worse. Instead of maybe getting some help right now. So let me give you another chance. I'll say the number again. 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. One other chance to call on this idea of talking about empathy. I do want to talk about empathy because it's fascinating to talk about, and I will in a moment. But if you have some thoughts about it, rather than for me jumping in and saying what I think about it, I'd like to hear from one or two listeners about, you know, what's your view of empathy? What does it mean to you? How do you create it? How do you generate it? What are your thoughts about empathy? 203-336-9756. Hi, this is Chuck. Oh, can you turn your radio down, please? Thank you.
Hello?
Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
This is B.
B?
Yes.
Okay, hi, B. Yeah, and are you calling for some help with something, or did you have a thought about empathy?
I just had a thought about empathy.
Okay.
My thought is it's not easy nowadays to have empathy for a lot of people, considering the way society is nowadays about you wanting to, it's more about like a gang mentality other than empathy.
So you want to say a little bit more about what you mean by, first of all, what do you view as empathy, and then tell me a little bit more about the gang mentality. You may be right. I just would like to know a little more about what you're thinking when you say that.
It's hard for me to express empathy just because of what my upbringing was. Like, it's hard for me to find somebody I'm empathetic for. Even though I'm heartfelt and I care for other people, it's hard for me to actually feel empathy for them.
Okay, and that's something to do with your upbringing?
Yeah, with my upbringing.
Okay.
With that being said, my point is, with people being out there with social media and wanting to be the most popular person, that I feel like does not help people be empathetic towards other people, rather than wanting to be more popular than the other person. Does that make sense to you?
Well, you said something about gang mentality, and where were you going with that? It's just a lot of people want to say the same things and just kind of reinforce each other, or that's what I heard, but I'm not sure I'm right. I just want to check that with you.
As far as the gang mentality goes, I have gone to protests and gone to different things throughout. I'm from Philadelphia originally. I'm up here now.
Yeah.
And I see that people want to belong to something, and then when you get into larger groups, your individual message seems to get skewed by other people's who are stronger personalities than myself.
Okay. So,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, so sometimes messages get buried by the dominant people in the group with the strongest, loudest message, maybe, and maybe the most. You didn't say this, but I mean, when you say gang, it seems to me gang mentality around the kind of things we're talking about is when people get polarized and you can't have a differing point of view.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you're conservative and you're in a conservative group, you can't have a progressive idea, and the same thing is true if you're progressive and you can't have a conservative idea. And you may not even you may not even think of it as conservative, but somebody else who feels like it's less progressive than they are feels as though, hey, anything that detracts from our ultimately right point of view. Yeah, it's part of what I was talking about in the beginning of the show. It's people just stop listening at some point, and that's really.
And they feel comfortable in that point. I feel like where I try to step out of my comfort zone and try to promote other people to do the same thing and help somebody you wouldn't normally help. Maybe even if it's just helping an older lady that's to her car or whatnot, or just doing little things in my day-to-day life to make myself feel better. It makes me feel like I'm promoting. I feel like most people's stance is that we love our country, we love each other, we love our neighbors. That's not debatable. What's debatable is the fact that there is something that's wrong in our society right now that everybody is aware of, but it's hard for anybody to stand up and say exactly what that is.
Well, it's interesting the way you frame it. I'd like to think that everybody loves our country that's here. I'd like to think that everybody loves their neighbors and loves their families, and I'd like to believe all that, but I don't. I don't know that everybody loves our country. I don't know that everybody loves their family. I don't know that everybody loves their neighbors. But I think that a world where there was more of that rather than less of it, where it was... Are you in a really noisy place?
I'm sorry. Let me help you out there. Is that better?
Yeah, that's a lot better. Thanks. So, where there's a lot more people who are trying to do what I was talking about, random act of kindness, where people are just going out of their way and can disagree without being disagreeable, if that makes sense. If we can talk with one another and not necessarily have the same exact point of view.
We have an opium epidemic right now in Connecticut and throughout the country. I mean, if everyday people who are weller off than the people who have the condition, which is going to be extremely uncomfortable for them to get into that type of position to help somebody out who is dealing with a drug abuse or some type of problem like that. But just getting out of your comfort zone in any way possible and getting yourself used to being helpful to, like I said, society, your neighbors, and just showing more love to everybody and being a sample of what should be happening. Because we can't depend on celebrities or sports people or anybody to do it other than ourselves. And that's the point I'm calling to make, is that everyday people, they are heroes out there that make a change in everyday people's lives, that need to stand up and make their voice be heard, that there's something wrong and we need to fix it.
Right, and when they get shouted down by the people that are on the fringes because they're the ones with the loudest, noisiest, most aggressive voices, I think maybe it's kind of like, we don't often, at least this is the first time I've thought about it this way, it's kind of like it's being bullied. Right? I mean,
in some respects, exactly. And we need to be aware of that. Like you see the slow change with social media, with being popular about being not bullied and whatnot. We need to make the same exact example throughout everything of society, not just the Harvey Weinsteins and what's popular today or yesterday or tomorrow, but actual things in everybody's life that happens to each and every individual, accountable, and make yourself proud of being the one that stands up in the crowd. Make yourself proud of being the hero. And even if it's just your kid's life, if it's your neighbor's life, say like you saved the little girl from having to walk to school one day by giving her a ride or whatnot. Right. Anything that proves that positivity will always shine over negativity is a good and positive thing.
Well, let me say that it's pretty darn hard to stand up to a bully, whether it's a bully who is yelling about his or her political point of view as being the right way and the only way to think. But if somebody gets shouted down that you see in a crowd and you don't feel comfortable speaking up because you don't want to be bullied too, something else you might do is to approach that other person and say, you know what, I didn't feel comfortable saying something in this crowd, but I want you to know I thought what you were saying made some sense to me. I mean, maybe there's ways to be supportive quietly without necessarily being the one who's going to be bullied next because there's a crowd of people and they're all screaming.
And that's a great point to be made. You can't stick your neck out, and it's better to work with somebody than against somebody. So that's a perfect point to be made. You're not trying to change people who they are as a person, but you're trying to enlighten them on how to think about it in a different way.
Right. And I want to just say that I do think that there are most of the people in this country that really do love the country, that really do care about their community and their neighborhoods. But sometimes even within each of us who might say that, feel that most of the time, once in a while something crops up that, I mean, we're all kind of focused on the people that we're familiar and comfortable being around as being what's attractive to us. And when the stranger, whoever that stranger is, the person who's different, whether it's a color, a religion, or a political viewpoint, is different than us, we sometimes are repelled by it, and some of that's inside of us. And I hope that people listening can understand how important it is, if the world's to be a better place, to kind of let go of that repulsion and just say, hey, why am I feeling like that? Just because they're different and they're strange to me, instead of trying to understand, hey, what's different about this person? And in fact, how might we be similar? I was struck by there was something going on in the local community where I live, where there was some Muslim outreach to other groups, other religions, other groups in the community, and they invited people in to see a service and to have a meal together. And when we sat down, I don't know a lot of Muslims personally. I know a few, but not many. And when we all sat down, you know, it's funny. We weren't talking about religious differences. We weren't talking about all kinds of things that have to do with Islam. We were just talking about what's going on in our lives, and about our children, and about our families, and about our workplaces. And it didn't seem so strange. It seemed very much the same as if I was sitting down with anyone who was more like me, in the sense of more similar. And so all of a sudden I realized that, you know what, maybe, why don't we try and find what we have in common, as opposed to focus so much on what's different about us.
And that's where we'll find our strength, as I feel like, as a society and as Americans, to be able to find the common ground and good in everybody, and let everything that isn't so important, as such as political views and whatnot, skew. I mean, we all need a place to live. We all need a place to raise our family and hope for the next generation to do better. But we need to have a voice also to be able to make sure that what's going wrong now doesn't continue to go wrong.
Well, I want to say thank you for the call, B. I appreciate it. And I also appreciate the idea that you're doing what you can. It was kind of what I was talking about earlier. You know, we're not necessarily changing the world by ourselves. But, you know, one of the things that I believe is part of my religion is that if you change one person, you change the world. If one person listening to you and me talk decides to do a few more nice things for a few other people and try to push themselves past where they're stuck in terms of their own belief system that's keeping them from being friendly with others who seem different, who seem to be the stranger, if we can get past that and move more towards how are we similar and how can we be more caring and supportive and empathetic to one another, the world's a better place, and each of us can do our share.
Yes, thank you for your time, and everybody, a smile is universal. Just smile to your neighbor and be happy. So thank you for your time, and I hope you have a good day.
You too, B. Thanks for the call. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, thank you. So we've got a couple of callers, Bob and B, and I like to encourage every once in a while, I'd like to have a woman call the show. It seems like sometimes I have a show where it's all men and sometimes it's all women. But having not had a woman call the show, before we end, is there anybody out there listening that'd like to either talk about an issue that you're having or also something around empathy? Just a little bit of, and the number, I'll give it to you again, 203-336-9756. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who's calling, please?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And what was your first name that I can address you by?
I don't have a question. I do have a comment.
Oh, could I use your name, though, to talk to you?
My name is Donna.
Pardon me?
Donna.
Donna. Okay, thank you, Donna, for calling. Go ahead. What's your comment?
First time I've heard your show, I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
And I think that your last caller sounds like a very nice person. But the purpose of my call is whatever it is in life, it all starts with us. And so self-love and then self-empathy, self-compassion, that's where it all starts. And if we are kind to ourselves, we'll be kind to others. And you can't live your life evolving around what's happening or what other people are doing. You have to disregard that and just do the best, kindest things that you can.
So your comment is about what we can do ourselves to be accountable for making the world a better place for ourselves and everybody else in it that we come in contact with, right?
Absolutely. It all starts at home, which is us.
Thanks. And how do you come by that? Is that something you were raised with? Did you come to learn that later in life? Was it something instilled in you from your parents? Or?
I've always lived this way, but I don't know, maybe the past 3 years I've become extremely spiritual, not religious, but spiritual.
Uh-huh.
And I just believe that it all starts with us. And I know by changing my thought processes, I've become more comfortable with people that I don't necessarily agree with, but they're welcome to their opinion and the way that they run their life, but I'm not going to change the way that I live my life.
So you're comfortable listening to people talk about the way they want to live, and it might be different than how you live. It doesn't change how you live, and you allow people to be different without judging them? Is that sort of what I heard you say?
Absolutely. I mean, and what I try to do is just very gently make suggestions, little pokes on, talk about it this way, you might feel differently. Because that's what I do with myself. I go back to the triggers. Why do I feel like I do? What's making me feel like this? So the same thing when conversing with another, if you can find out what the real root is of the feeling that they have, whether it's prejudice, whatever, it just makes everything better.
Well, it's nice that you were willing to share that today, and I really appreciate it. And I do want to thank you very much for making the call and taking the time, and the fact that you're willing to poke yourself on occasion, as well as to poke others. That's great. I appreciate that.
Several times daily, I'm poking myself because it all, if something happens and you feel this emotion building up, then you just step back and go, wait a minute. Where's that really coming from?
Right.
Is it this issue or is it something a lot deeper?
Well, it's interesting. Let me just ask you: how do you feel if somebody is the one poking you?
I'm sorry?
How do you feel if somebody is the one gently poking you?
Oh, I challenge it. I don't challenge it. I accept it, but I can certainly defend how I feel, and I am totally open to other people's suggestions and feelings, and will certainly entertain them.
Right.
But the base of my life is love and kindness.
Right. Well, that's great. That's great. I think the idea of trying to make life where you're the one accountable as opposed to wanting to blame and justify is wonderful. That's number one. Love and kindness is a foundation. It's hard to find something more attractive than that. So again, that's something very special. And the fact that you've become more spiritual is hopefully a lot of people are becoming more spiritual and want to pay attention to the things that really. Not everybody believes in an afterlife, but I don't know that it even matters as much as, I'm not doing things on this planet today with others to make sure I get into heaven. I'm doing it because I want to make life as close as I can to a great place right now, right here with the people that I happen to interact with every day, every moment, to the best of my ability. I'm not always great at it, but I'm trying to do that.
Yeah, well, hey, at least you're recognizing it and trying to correct it, and that's what I'm doing as well. But it all starts at home.
Well, that's great. Well, I want to thank you very much for your phone call. I'm just about out of time, so I'm going to say goodbye to you, but I appreciate you calling in and sharing what I think is your wisdom, your personal accountability, and I hope everybody else takes more responsibility for themselves and allows themselves the idea that, hey, if you disagree with someone, you might gently prod, but if there's a big defensive wall, then maybe you back away. And also that you allow people into your world, and maybe without getting too defensive, because it's hard not to be defensive if somebody's critical of something we say or do or the way we behave.
If you become defensive, you then have to ask yourself, why are you becoming defensive?
Exactly. Exactly. And maybe there's a learning there for all of us as well.
Oh, there is. Life is a learning curve, that's for sure. But thank you for your program. It's really fantastic.
Thank you so much for the call, Donna. Appreciate it.
Have a good
You too. Bye-bye. So everybody been listening to Chuck Wolf, the Take the Wheel, the Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. Hope you enjoyed the show, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'll be back next week and look forward to it. Take care and enjoy your week. And remember to take the wheel and control how you feel. Bye-bye now.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.